Now, May the 3rd, which is today, is World Press Freedom Day. Now, this year's theme is freedom of expression as a driver for all other human rights. Speaking ahead of the day, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says freedom is under attack in every corner of the world. Let's now reflect on the day with Latiefa Mobara, Press Council of South Africa Executive Director, who joins us live now. Thank you so much for your time, Latiefa. One of the things that the UN Secretary General says is that freedom depends on press freedom. Let's start with your reflections today.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. I do want to say that, today I just read a report from the World Association of News Publishers. And that report states that media freedom is under challenge globally. And the report speaks of increasing threats against the media, the targeting and intimidation of journalists, particularly women journalists. And then it also speaks about the kind of struggle that business operations face while trying to remain afloat in what is a kind of global economic decline. It also deals with issues of the increasing examples of mis and disinformation. And then it speaks to, I think, an incredibly important challenge which we need to start reflecting on. And that is the challenge of the impact that generative AI will have on the media industry in the future. And I think that it's quite significant that the kind of what is called the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, resigned from Google this week, and that he actually warned that this tech can be pose an incredible threat to humanity. So I do think that it is something that we need to start looking at now already so that we can mitigate the kinds of challenges that we will face in the future.
And
I think that this report, sorry.
No, continue just a little bit.
The other thing that this report also states, and it's very worrying, that 66 journalists have already have been killed in 2022, and that they estimate that 363 journalists are currently in jail. In South Africa, we face exactly the same problems. We have seen a decline in kind of advertising spend because of the economic situation, even before COVID. And this has resulted in kind of mass retrenchments. It's in newsrooms, there's it's the closure of several publications, and quite a lot of our magazines have closed down. Journalists have been intimidated, and in particular, the cyberbullying that I think our women journalists are experiencing. And then I think, sorry.
No problem. Let's talk about, these two issues that you've mentioned. I'll start with, the shrinking newsrooms, because shrinking newsrooms mean that journalists are now working longer hours. They're finding themselves under increased amount of pressure. Let's talk about that psychologically and the continuous impact that this has on the mental health of the journalists.
Well, I think it's not just the kind of small newsrooms that are impacting the kind of mental health. It's also that our journalists are now being forced to write for several platforms on one particular day. So you're no longer confined to a kind of print publication. You are tweeting at the same time you are writing for your kind of online publication. And there's an incredible level of stress that I think journalists are facing. So I think we do need to take mental health quite seriously. And in fact, the report, the World Association of News Publishers report actually reflects on that. And that we need to really create environments within newsrooms where these issues are addressed.
Now, let's talk about the targeting of journalists. Of course, we've seen it online. We've seen, some either using anonymous accounts, others targeting journalists openly while they're doing their work. What risk does this pose on the kind of work that we do and even on media freedom per se?
Well, I think, we really need to, And I say here now, this is not a kind of a problem that can just be addressed by the media. It needs to be addressed by the public as well. We need to create environments where our journalists are protected. We need to see journalism as a public good. We need to make sure that those journalists are protected. If you look back on, say, the kind of apartheid era and when journalists were under incredible threat, journalists were often provided safe spaces if they were fleeing from police, safe spaces within people's homes. Nowadays, what you're seeing is that journalist cameras are being taken away from them. Their cars are being attacked, and we really need to ask the community and to help us to protect these journalists, because actually what they're doing is that they're providing a space and a voice for those exact concerns that they want to articulate, and that won't be articulated if the journalists are under threat.
All right, Latiefa, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for those reflections today. And of course, launching that FAIR campaign on such an important day as well. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. That was Latiefa Mobara, Press Council of South Africa's Executive Director, of course, talking about very important issues. And I'm sure throughout the channel, you're going to be seeing quite a lot more of these stories being covered, especially when we look at our work as journalists. I mean, some of the fingers pointed at us when it comes to fairness, but there's a lot, of course, of conversations to have in this regard.